Hello everyone, welcome to Geonodes Daily series, where we do something cool in geometry nodes and we try to do it as fast as possible. And today we are going to recreate this awesome effect from here, this morphing effect. In the previous video, I showed you how you can create a special interpolation, the Quint interpolation. And today I'm also going to show you how you can change a linear interpolation, how you can incorporate in your projects a custom using custom interpolation. So we have a bunch of points that we are going to go through today, the ones listed here. So lots of things to look. At the end, in the final point, I'm going to show you the file that you can find on Gumroad, all these presets. But now we will just start with the clean file. So let's check the screencast keys are working. I also used the append function to add the two nodes that we'll be using today. This interpolation that was created in the previous video. So I'm going to link the videos for this interpolation and the mixed vector presets, so you can see in details how these are working. But don't worry if you just want to have a quick look at them. I'm going to show you when we are going to use them what they contain. Before start, a quick shout out and a quick thank you to all of you that are supporting this channel. Thank you very much for helping me by purchasing the projects on Gumroad. I also hope you find them useful for your own projects. That gives me a lot of joy. Also, thank you for all of you that are supporting this channel by subscribing, commenting on the videos, liking the videos, offering feedback. All of these are very, very valuable to me, and thank you very much for taking the time to do all those things. Now let's start with the first point, explaining the logic of the morphing effect. We will have a shape 1 and a shape 2. We'll turn those into a bunch of points, and then we will just mix the position of those two to create the effect you saw in the demo. And in order to change that normal linear interpolation that you usually have with the one that we have in our preset, something like this, we will use that preset. So that will be in a nutshell what we are going to do. So let's start by creating the shapes, and the first shape that I want to create is the text. So let's delete the input node for now. We will not use it, and let's do a text string to curve, plug it here into the frame, connecting to the output, and put some string here. Let's say letter M. Okay, so we have this one. In order to get a 3D effect, we want first to fill the shape, so we can do that with a fill curve, and now we have a fill shape. And to make it 3D, we can use a solidify modifier, or we can do it in the geometry nodes. So let's do it in geometry nodes. I like to do things as much as possible inside of geometry nodes. And we have in the mesh this node called extrude mesh. So this offset is a little bit too big. Let's make it smaller. We don't have a back, but that's okay. For our effect, it's just fine. And we have this triangulated mesh here. Also not a big deal for what we need to do. So I'm just going to leave it like this. So now that we have this, we can create the second shape. And then I'm going to talk about the not the best way, kind of depends on the project, but a way to do a nice morphing between shapes. So let's do the second shape. I'm gonna just put this into a separate frame and duplicate this frame, take both of frame, G, hover over this, okay, just a little bit of organizing. And the second shape you saw in the demo was a spiral. We kind of have a node that is actually a spiral. It's here in the curve primitive, curve spiral. So let's take this one here and let's turn it to a mesh by using a curve to mesh node. So let's plug this one here and look at the output to see what we have. And in order to give it some thickness, we will also use a curved circle and plug it here. And of course, let's make it like a lot smaller, something like this. As for the parameters of this spiral, let's play a little bit with them. First of all, I want to change the number of rotations, and I'm gonna use a full circle. That will be 2 pi's or tau shortcut in Blender. And for the start radius, let's make this one like smaller. And of course, I want to change also the end, the start end and the radius. So actually, let's make this one and something like this. Awesome. And for the height, let's make this one also smaller, something like this maybe. So now we have something that looks like this one, and I think it's good enough for now. Just this one, I think I want to change a little bit. Yeah, now it looks much better. So basically now we have what we need to morph between these shapes. If we turn these geometries into points, the problem is that if we look at this one, we have like 6,000 points, and if we connect this one, for example, we will have like, let me turn it into points by realizing the instances. We will have like 54 points. So if you try to morph the position of one shape to another one, you'll get weird results, like a bunch of extra points sticking out into one place, or something else that is weird. So one method that I discovered that it's nice to get an even spreading, it's to create your own point of clouds and make sure that it encompasses your shape, and then just morph both points by doing like a shrink wrap to your shapes, and then you can do your morphing between those two stages to get your result. So now that we have the shapes, let's go to morphing between shapes by creating first the point cloud. And for that, I want to add a line, mesh line. What will that do? We can put it to 0 for now. It gives us a control for the number of points. So let's say we want to have like 10,000 points. And once we have this, we can do a mesh to points. So now we have a cloud of points, but they are all bunched up here at the 0, 0 location. So we would want to spread them out in a random fashion. It's just fine. And we can use set position for that. And then we can do like random value. and we can plug it here into the position, and we can have like -1 and 1, something like that. That's kind of looking not cool at all, because if we use a float value, then we get this line because everything gets clicked basically. So let's do a proper vector, and let's say -1 and 1, and now we have a cube of points that are distributed randomly. So now we can use these this cube of points to morph the shapes by using a proximity. So let's do just that here. I'm gonna use those to redistribute our points. By using another set position node. That's a very useful node. So let's plug it here. And now if we want to take the position of the first object, for example, we can go here and get geometry proximity, plug it here. Let's move this a little bit here, and we take the data from here. Faces, it's okay because we have faces here, and then we can take the position and plug it here, and now we have a bunch of points that are our letter. And by taking this node and plug it here, we can get the points that make the spiral. So let's center this letter here, so we don't have them moving around. Let's put like center and middle, and now we can simply morph easier between these two shapes. So now it's time to introduce that mix vector node. So we can simply mix between first shape and second shape and plug this one here. And now we have this factor that controls our morphing. Like I said at the beginning, I'm gonna give you a link. You should check the top right corner and you'll find a link to the tutorial about how this preset was created. But if you don't want to do that, this is how this node setup looks like. I'm gonna make it bigger. You can see it and you can replicate it. Awesome. So now we have this nice factor to mix between these two shapes. One more thing that in this case is not absolutely necessary, but is nice. In order to get a good distribution here of points, you kind of have to make this point cloud come pretty close to the boundaries of your shape, whatever that shape is. Otherwise, you will get some anomalies, and you can easily do that. I'm going to show you how. So we have this set position that it's creating our nodes here, and we can take this very useful bounding box node, and we can take the bounding box of the realized instances here from one object, and that's going to give us a minimum and maximum of the bounding box, and then we can use that to control these random values. And we can do this for both our geometries, so we can take this one as well. Okay, and the way to use them, we can simply duplicate this node, and once we duplicate it, we can do a minimum from this one with the minimum from this one. And let me move this ones a little bit. And now we can use this one here for the minimum. And then we can simply duplicate this node and take the maximum from this bounding box and the maximum from this bounding box, not the clump, the vector. And now we can plug it here. So in order to control everything, we will need a value. So let's take an input value node, and this will be our controller. So let me give it a color so we can easily spot it. And we can plug the factor from this one, and the factor from this one, and the factor from this one. So now we can control all of them together. Awesome. And that's gonna give us a nice controller, because the bounding box is just going to morph and make sure that we'll encompass our object as close as possible because of the bounding box node. So you can play now with these values and make the spiral like bigger, for example. Let's do 1 meter just to see what happens. And our morphing was just gonna work very, very nicely. Cool. Okay, so that's a good use for this node. And we have now this nice controller. The next things that I want to show you is how you can add the easing interpolation. Because right now we have a linear interpolation, something like this, but we want to use something like this or whatever. So for that, let's add this node. And again, I'm going to put a link for it to see how it was built. But if you don't want to go to another video, this is how this interpolation was constructed. And I'm gonna show you the output as well. So if we go out of this one and we go to the spline and plug it here, you see how this is looking. You have an ease in, or you can use an ease out, something like that, or you can use ease in and ease out, and that's going to replace you that linear interpolation that goes like this between the points. That's the idea. And in order to make this easy, I added this factor in that you can play with, and you can use the output in the factor out. And by the way, if you downloaded from Gumroad any of the easings presets, check your email or just go to Gumroad and re-download the preset, because I made sure to add this factor to all the previous projects that didn't have this one. So having this one makes using a factor very, very easy. We can plug this one here, and then we can plug this morphing here. And now, instead of having, like I said, this interpolation, we have whatever we control here, something like this, or maybe something like this, whatever you want. And that's gonna work. If we look at here, we start to do this morphing, we get a completely different result because of this interpolation. So this is how you can add this custom easing to your project. Very, very easy. I made it very, very easy for you by just using this factor in and the output factor out. The next thing that I want to show you, it's like you saw in the demo. By the way, let me make these points smaller because they kind of don't look very nice. We can control the radius here. Let's make it like 10 times smaller. In the demo, we have this moving of the points up and down, and they create a very nice motion. And I want to show you how you can achieve this effect. How can you animate the points? So let me quickly save the file, and we can move to doing that animation. A few questions that we have to ask ourselves at this point. What exactly we want to be affected by the motion? So if we want all the points to be affected by the motion, we have to plug our setup before we start to push them around. That's why we'll have also the morphing going on and the motion. So for that, let's add another set position node here, and let me duplicate this frame. I kind of like to put a purple color on my procedural animation. That way I can easily spot the said animation. And one way to easily animate stuff is to use this scene time node that gives you access to the seconds or the frame. So let's use the frame, and we want to do something to the position of the points. And what I want is to get like a circular motion. And for that, when we think of circles, we think about sine and cosine. So let's take the sine and also take the cosine. And we will use this to compose a vector. So let's do vector, combine x, y, z. We have to figure out where we want the motion. And our entire setup is centered on the y and x axis. So we can also play with the z axis if we want, but let's keep things simple and decide what axis we want. Let's keep just two axes. Let's say the y, meaning this one, and the z, meaning the height. Why not? So let's put this one here and this one here, and then we can plug this one into the offset, because we don't want to disturb the position, we just want to add something to it. So once we did this, let's add our scene time to these values, and for that we can just plug this one here and this one here, and if we play the animation we get this, something going on, but it's very, very fast. So let's make sure that we can control this speed. Let me collapse these two nodes. Let's take a vector map, plug it here, switch this one to scale, and now we can play with this scale to get a more controllable effect. So I think this is also too fast. Let's divide it by 10. And now we kind of get something like you see here. So let's add a little bit more interest to this entire setup, because right now all the points are moving at the same time, and it will be nice if we could do something about that, to add some randomization. And also if we would want to change the, right now we can change this speed, but it will also be nice to control not just the flow but also the wiggle that we create here, the speed. And we can use a multiply node here, and now we can see that the entire motion is a lot smoother, a lot slower. And look at what happens if we put this one to 1. That controls how far the points go. when they start to move. So the distance they travel, the flow speed, and this one will control just how fast the motion is in general. And if we want to add some randomization, of course we need to add a random value node, and we can simply just add it to our setup, something like this, and you can play with whatever values you want here. I just used this one, and as you can see, we get this back and forth motion that can be controlled just how fast it is from this setup, and just how far they go from this one, and that's gonna give you a lot of controls to get interesting motion. And of course, this is gonna work just fine with our morphing, so we can do like a morphing effect, and the points are still going to move, and that's gonna give you this awesome result that you see here. You can make like something like bubbles floating into a glass or whatever you want. This is a very versatile setup. One more thing that I want to show you, it's how you can turn all these points that are not going to show you in render into something that you can actually see. And then at the end, I'm going to show you the finished project and go through the parameters if you want to recreate the exact effect and you for some reason don't decide not to download the gumroad project file. So we have to give some real geometry to this. And for my example, I thought that a diamond shape like this is gonna be good. So the way I created that, I think this is really interesting to show you. Let's take a cylinder and plug it here. This is going to be our particle setup. And right now we have a cylinder, and a way to turn this into a diamond shape, really easy with geometry nodes, is to pass this node through a dual mesh node. And as soon as you do this, you get this awesome result. And now you can play with the parameters to get a faceted object like this one. And yeah, this is kind of how you can get a diamond shape really fast and really easy in geometry nodes. What I did after that was to take this entire setup and do instance on points and use those points to instance these objects. And right out of the box, we get this setup because everything is too big. So let's make it smaller, and we can make it smaller by simply doing something like this. And that's going to give us this result. But of course, nothing stops us from simply using a random value. You can leave it on float because we want to modify all these values at once. So you can put whatever values you want. So let's say like make some of the points really small and some of them a little bit bigger. So you get something like this. And to take this even further, you can switch this one to vector and plug it into the rotation here. And if you want to make things rotate a full 360 degrees, both ways, you can do like a minus tau. Make sure that it's not capitals, it's small caps. So minus tau, and that's going to give you a full circle, or you can do like pi times 2 and going to give you the same result. So now you have a random rotation for all these points that you see here. So awesome stuff. Now you have this cool setup that will give you some particles to play with. But like I said, you can change it and use to anything you want. Like in the final point, I'm gonna show you the finished project, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about some parameters that I added to the output. So thank you for staying to this part. I'm gonna show you the parameters that you will find on the gumroad project. The first one is optimize the viewport, and as you can see, the tooltip tells you that it's reducing the number of particles visible. So if you work with very big numbers or complex geometry, that can help your viewport stay responsive. And this is included here. We have this optimized switch viewport, and like the tooltip says, we use only 1/10 of the points in the viewport if this is activated, something like this. And when you have a particle number control, that's gonna be for this point cloud that we created here. This is the number of particles that we use. And then, of course, we can control the scale of the particles. And for that, of course, we have to go to the particle setup at the end. And we have this scale. So basically what I did, I created this also random value that has the seed exposed, but also we have this scale that can be between 0, that means of course 0, and 1 is going to give you the biggest scale that you see here, or the default values that is 0.5. So basically this is what this setup does. At the default, 0.5 is just gonna use these values that we have here, because 0.5 multiplied by 2 is gonna give you 1. So we have these values, and we can go like twice the values that we have here, or all the way to 0, or less than these values. You can play with it. This is how this is set up. And then we have rotation seed and scale seed. Just the seed exposed here and the seed from these random rotations here. And we have, of course, the morphing effect that controls everything, like the morphing between the shapes, or the morphing between, like I showed you, the shrink wrap of the bounding box that we create on the point cloud that we generate that gets stick to our shapes. And then we have the flow and wiggle speed that we created. The flow speed that controls basically how far the particles move in a certain direction is just exposing these parameters. And for the wiggle speed, we kind of have this setup here, where you take the value and divide it by 10 in order to get a more manageable value, a more useful value. And then it's just like we did earlier, just multiplying this here, nothing special. After that, of course, we have this animation seed that it's controlling this random value that we are adding to the points. As you can see, by the way, the sections are clearly separating by using this value in the square brackets for each section. It starts like this, and then you have it in front, so you can easily identify the sections. After we did with the animation, we have all these easing values that are simply just, if we go here, where we use the morph control, and this is Quint interpolation, just direct exposure of this parameter, so you can change the interpolation the way it looks. And then we have the controls for the text. So if we go to the shape text, I exposed the string. I would really like to be able to expose the font, but you cannot. So you have to change it inside if you want to do. And the other things that I exposed was the height that controls the extrude mesh height, and of course the size of the text, so you can make it bigger or smaller. And then we have the controls for the spiral that are here, and you can see we have the same height, so you can synchronize the height of the objects. In this case, the height is not extrude, it's just the height of the spiral. And we have the other parameters of the spiral controlled from here. So the full setup looks like this. As you can see, we have the shape 1, shape 2, turning them into a point of clouds. So we make sure that we use the same number of points on both shapes. And then we make by proximity, the points of these point clouds sticks to the shapes. And then we mix between those shapes using the vector preset. And we further modify that mixing by using this easing. We also have this animation that moves the particles around. And after we do all this stuff, we turn those points into particles using this diamond shape created here. So this is it for this project. I'm going to make another video talking a little bit about the lighting and the materials. And thank you very much for supporting my channel. Thank you for subscribing, liking the videos, and thank you very much for your feedback. It helps me make better videos. So until the next tutorial, I hope you will do something cool. If you do and you want to share that with me, tell me what you do. I'll be very happy to look at your work, see what kind of ideas you come up with. Until the next video, I say to you,